Alright YouTube, in this video we are going to see how to create this online image editor using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. As you know, this is my 63rd JavaScript project. Let me show you what this image editor does. For that we have to choose the image. As you see, all the controls are hidden by default. Once I choose the image, let me choose the image, the controls are visible. What we can do with the controls, these are the filters. We can increase the brightness. Let me increase the brightness. We can adjust the contrast. We can make this blur. We can make this black and white. We can increase the saturation. We can decrease the opacity. That means we are making this transparent. We can flip the image. We can rotate the image, and we can save the image. If I click on save, it will be saved on my local device and I can view this. So this is the final output. If you want to reset it, click on reset. So this is the original image. This is the original image and this is the final output. Fine. In case if you're wondering to create a similar kind of projects, I have a playlist, complete playlist of vanilla JavaScript project. It has all the games like Alien Invader, Duck Hunt, Bubble Game. So we have this is the 63rd project, so I'll leave the link in the description in case if you're interested, learn it. Now we're going to create this from scratch, and I'll leave the source code for this project in the description in case if you got stuck somewhere while creating along with me. Just copy paste the code and it will work. And if you want to what do you say, if you want to learn by blindfold, in this case, like I have the steps that I would be creating for this project, you can try it by creating like this HTML and icon. So first itself, and then click the image button, let the file explorer open. You do it by yourself by searching on internet and then get into my code in case if you got stuck. So this is for the reference. Now this is a HTML file which is required for creating this image editor. Then we have script file, then we have CSS file. Let me create this from scratch. Let me create another file called index2.js, sorry, index2.html. Likewise, we need a CSS file, style2.css. I'm giving the suffix 2 to identify that we are creating it. Then script2.js. Then for the HTML, I'm just going to get the HTML just as a start template. Now you see we have a title tag, we have script style sheet, it would be style2.css. then we have font awesome icon, then we have box icon. Why box icon? Because there are some icons which font awesome does not have. Example, the flip images, the font awesome does not support. That is the reason I am using the box icon. Now close the body tag and close the HTML. Cool, it's just script2.js. Now we have linked the styles and script to our HTML. Now it's time for the design. Now it's time to design the HTML. We don't need this tab. Now we need the font. Here we have used the font Roboto. Let me use a CDN of Roboto on our, sorry, it's not Roboto, it's Poppins. For all element, remove the margin and padding and add the font family Roboto. Cool. Now for the HTML, we need a container. Inside the container we need two separate div, which is editor panel and the preview image inside the editor we need a label. We'll name it as filter, and then we have options. Inside the options we would be having buttons. The buttons which we have seen are like brightness, contrast, and each of them will have an ID. So you can see we have ID, and I've added the class called active just for the brightness. Now we need to create this section. So here, just after the options, we need to create a div called slider, and the slider has two children. The first one is filter info. The filter info is this one, brightness and 100%. You can see we have a text with inside the paragraph, and we have identified with class name and class value, and then we have input range slider. Minimum value is 0, maximum value is 200, and the default value is 100. Now we need to make this preview image. For that, you can see I have a placeholder image. So just this is it. Now after that, we have a rotate section inside this editor panel itself. We will call it as rotate. The parent would be called rotate, and just like the filter, we have label, and then we have options, and inside the options we have the button with icons. Some of them are font ISO, some of them are box icons. Each of them has the ID, just like for our filter option. Now after this editor panel and after this preview image, we need a final div which will hold these three buttons: reset button, choose button, and save button. So as a third children, this is the control, and we have a button for the first one, and since these are together, so I have made this into a div. So the input file chosen, it will be hidden by default. So when I click on this choose image, that input type file will be chosen. So for now, just ignore this and focus on two. So I have that is clear. Let me open this and let's see how. So to open again, just copy this, paste it here. It would be just index2.html. You have to call it index2.html. Before that, I am running this in the XAMPP called local server, because the box icon only works with the local server. That's the reason. If you're not using box icon, you don't need the local server. Example XAMPP. Now it's time to add CSS to this. So choose the container. So before that, let's choose the body. We need to make this display flex, align item center, just because we can have the container in the middle of the screen. Justify content center, and the height is going to be 100% of vertical height. So this is how it looks. Now just for our reference, we have a container. Let's make the display flex property, because we have three container inside the main container. So the first one is editor panel, image, preview image, and then control. So if we make this display flex, it will be displayed side by side. Display flex. Cool. One more thing what we can do is, we want these two sections side by side, but not the wrapper. So container has first child and this is the second child, and the wrapper's first child is editor panel and preview image. Now we can modify the CSS, like wrapper will have display flex, so the editor image and preview image will be side by side, and the controls will be at the bottom. Cool, we got it. Now just for our reference, we can give the background color black to the body, and for the container we can give background color white just to see and just to the difference, and then we can have padding of 30 pixel. Now this is how it looks. I can zoom out. So we are almost close. Now it's time for the CSS for the filter section. So we won't be focusing much on CSS, the exact CSS, but we'll make it somewhat similar because the major focus is on JavaScript than the CSS. Now we have the div called filter. Editorial panel has filter, the class. Again, this is rotate, and these should be inside the div called filter. Now let's design the filter. We have filter, we have rotate, we need margin top to this of 10 pixel. Now let's work on filter. Inside filter we have options. So make this display flex. So if you see, it would be all the button will be side by side as it is right now. Now we need to give width to the button so that only 2 shows up. Width of calculation, we need 100% divided by 2, so it is 50 pixel minus 4 pixel. So this is for width. If it doesn't work, we'll need to check in the inspect. Choose the button. So it would work. We need to give flex wrap. Cool, we got it. Now justify content space between. So this 4 pixel will be the space between these two, and we can have margin top of 15 pixel. If it is too much, we can reduce this to 5 pixel. Cool. Now it's time for the padding to the button. Refresh this. We got this. Now it's time for the next section, which is slider. Call the slider info. This is the parent, and we need to make this display flex and justify content space between, and we can have margin top of 5 pixel. Cool, that works. Now let's design the filter, which is input. Call the slider. Inside we have input. We can make this width 100%, so it stretch the width of the container, and we can change the accent color. We can make this red. Let me show you what red looks like. You can see. So again, the slider is a container. We run this. Here we'll add margin to the slider 10 pixel. Now again, same for the rotate. What we have done for this, we have to just copy paste for the rotate section. Rotate has also options. Rotate also has options instead as buttons. Now it should not be 50. Let me show you how this looks. We can remove this, and it would be side by side. Remove the flex wrap property, and we need to give padding. Yeah, that was. Remove the space between. If you want, you can make this width 25%, so it's stretched. So that works. Now if you want, you can choose the image editor or the preview image. We'll go with the preview image. and we can have margin left of 15 pixel just to get space between these two containers. Now inside that we have image. We can give width of 400 pixel and height of 300 pixel, and object fit contain. So whatever the size of the image is, it would be contained inside this section. So in case if you want to make this at the center, you can give display flex align items center, justify content center. Now it will be at the center of this editor image. So we have a label. We can reduce the opacity to get the focus out of it. So the brightness, let's leave the brightness as it is. Now let's focus on this. So input type equal to file. I want this to be display none for now. So it's not going, we'll work on it. Let's just focus on the controls for now. We have controls. Make this display flex side, so it would be at the side by side. It's already to the side by side. We need space between them, so justify content space between like this. Now we need the same padding for the controls of button. Give the same padding, and inside the button also you can give display flex. That works. Then inside the controls we have rows. We can make this display flex, so it would be side by side. Cool. Problem with my mouse. Now to adjust it, you can give the CSS font property. So you can give font size of 14 pixel. Cool. Again we can give margin top to the button. So the controls margin top 15 pixel. Cool, we are almost there. If you want, you can have the space between the button. We can have margin right of 10 pixel. We'll leave this for now, and once we get into the CSS we'll work on it. It's time for the active class. We have a class called active on the buttons. So this buttons, the active class is inside the filter button with active class. Let's have the background color as red. Refresh this, it would be dark red. You can adjust this, get into the inspect, choose the color and select this, make this, yeah, this works. So wherever that is red, make it to this color. We add red on two places. Now for the button, we can have the border color also the light red. Cool. And for all the buttons, we want the cursor as pointer. Cool. So I believe the CSS part is done. Now we have to jump into JavaScript part. If you want to get some spaces, array ng, I'm just finding it. Control F, range, So input, we can have margin top of 5 pixel. Cool, we got some space. Now for the CSS part, we need for the script part we need HTML. Now we are going to work on JavaScript. Here, once I click on this choose image, before that let me show you what this does. If I click on choose image, we're able to choose the file. So let me add some more images. So if I click on choose file, you are able to see only the images. It is because this attribute on the um, input type file, you can see input type file, we are accepting only images, not other than images. So we are able to see only the images. Fine, that works. But when I click on this choose image, it will also allow me to choose the same this type of dialog box should open, and I would be able to select this. So how we are going to do this? So we need to get this choose image in the JavaScript. So document dot query selector. Since it is only one class, I'm using query selector, and let's store it into a variable. So if I click on this dot add event listener, so if I click on it, I want to be able to click on this input type file. So let's have this on JavaScript as well. Copy this, paste it, rename the class name, save it into a variable. So once I click on this, I need to apply a click function to this. Click. So let me refresh this and check it. If I click on this, so the JavaScript will apply click function to this. Click this. So I'm able to choose now. Now we can have input type hidden, or you can directly have hidden attribute here. Refresh it, it will go away. It's gone now. Now if I make a click on choose image, I'm able to choose only the images. Now we are going to see how to preview this image on this preview image section. For that, we need to get the preview image. So get the preview. We have a image inside it. We'll store it into a variable. So when there is an event listener change on the input file, we can have dot files 0. I will store it into a temp file. If console this and check console.log. Now let's click on the inspect and get into the console section. Refresh this, delete all the previous added, choose the image. Now I would able to see the images. Fine, is working. Now if this is not null, so if it is there, then we need to add the src. So we have url dot create object from URL. We need to pass this temporary file here, and now this will be converted into a file name, and the file name will be stored in the src. Now let's refresh this and check. So now we are able to see the images. Now let's choose other image. Fine, that's working. So now, as we have already seen, on page load everything is disabled. How we are going to do that? Now we need to add a class to the container called disable. So on the CSS, for the container with class disable. You can see I'm not leaving this space. That means both of them are the same div. So when there is disable, then I want some set of class. Let's say we have 3 classes to make opacity 0. So what are these 3 classes? Control, filter, and option. Control, filter, let me show you the HTML. Filter option, slider option, rotate option, and control option. So copy paste this. Filter, we have a slider and rotate, and finally the controls option. Not the control option, we accept the choose image, we need save image option dot, and the reset image option should have opacity 0, or let's say 0.2. just it shows. Refresh it, so you can see everything is hidden. Now once the image is added, we need to remove the disable class. So once the image is added, so get the disable class, get the container dot class list dot remove the class disable. Now let's check, and once we see the image, we need to display all the controls. Fine, that's working. And now we are going to see this active class is added to whichever I am clicking on it. Again accordingly, when it is glacial, the glacial text appears here. When it's brightness, the brightness appears here. When it's saturate, the saturate appears here. Let's make this. So before that, for just time being, let me remove the disable class so that we don't have to upload each time image to test the output. So on the final working application, we'll add the class disable. For now I'm going it. Cool. Now we need to get all the buttons. So to get all the buttons are inside the class called filter. Inside filter we have option, inside option we have buttons. So it's not query selector, it's query selector all, because multiple options, multiple buttons. So filter option, camel case. Now we have to loop through this for each of 1 by 1 option. We can get 1 by 1 option, and 1 by 1 option need to have an event listener called click. Add event listener, click. So once I click on it, I want the inner text of the name. So filter info dot name, filter info dot name. So again it's just a simple query selector, not query selector all. Filter name dot inner text equal to the option which I have selected dot inner text. Let's check. Click on contrast, blur, grayscale, saturate, and opacity. Accordingly it's working. Now it's time to remove the class called active. So for all element, so when I click on a particular button, I need to get the filter with class active, and I need to remove the class active. On a particular document, when I click on a button, wherever there is class active, I need to remove it. So this is what this line does. If you don't understand, just rewind it and listen it again. Now once I click on it, I want the button, this is the button which I have clicked, should have the class list dot add active. Refresh it, click on active. So now the active class is added appropriately to whichever button I click. And now when I change the range selector, I want the value to be displayed here. So get the slider. Inside the slider we have input. So let's check. Inside the slider we have input. Inside the slider we have our input. We'll just call the input. So filter range, we need to add an event listener to this. Dot add event listener. So when I change this, I want the value to be displayed over here. So instead of name, now it's value. Filter value. Filter value dot inner text equal to the filter range value. Now let's check. Change the range, so you can see we need to add the percentage sign as well, plus percentage. So now we can see, we can able to see that selected range over here as a text. Now we need to set the default value for each filters. So I have got all the IDs over here. Now let's set default value. Don't forget to add let. Now the value for brightness is 100 for now, contrast 100, blur 0, grayscale again 0. So grayscale we can make this 100, and saturation 100, and opacity 100. So for grayscale, if it is 0 it's normal color, if it is 100 then it would be grayish. Cool. Now what we need to do is we need to change the brightness value. If I change the brightness value called from 100 to 150, so it should be stored in a variable. So for that, on a change, on filter range change, you can see I'm getting the selected value. So if I click on a particular button, the active class is added, so it is known as a selected filter. Either it is brightness, either it is contrast, either it is blur, and so on. Now I need to get the ID of the selected button. So selector filter dot ID will, if it is brightness, then change the brightness value which we have added here. If it is contrast, they change the contrast value. If it is blur, then change the blur value. I use blurs because blur is a keyword, so that's why, to avoid name conflict, I'm using blurs. Now if it is grayscale, then store the value accordingly. One thing is we have changed the, so now the button is selected and the appropriate variable holds the value which we have selected with the help of range slider. Now the tricky part here is not everyone has the range 100. If you see brightness, the maximum value is 200. If you see contrast, again the maximum value is 200. If you see blur, the maximum value is just 10. The percentage I need to remove it. For maximum value of blur it's 10. For grayscale again the maximum value is 100. For saturation it's 200 again. For opacity it's 100. So just to give you an overview, this is 200, brightness is 200, contrast is 200, saturate is 200, blur is 10, grayscale is 100, and opacity is 100. So how we are going to set it? So we need to get the input field, input type range. So this is filter range. So on change. So what we are going to do is, as we have already seen, the brightness maximum value is 200, the contrast maximum value is 200, so the blur maximum value is 10, the grayscale maximum value is 100, saturation it's 200, opacity is 100. So we are going to change the maximum value on change. So here filter dot max equal to 200. So the right place to write is when I click on a button. So here it is. The maximum value need to be adjusted accordingly. So if I select the button brightness, because for each, so the max value should be inside here. So if I select the ID brightness, the button with ID brightness, the range value should be the value which I have selected. So I have selected here. Now the filter value, let me show you. Refresh, this is the original one. Refresh this. If I select contrast, change the value is 169. If I get into brightness, so to make this work, what we have to do is we have to do this similar thing. What I wanted to show you is, if I select brightness and change the value to 129, if I click contrast, it should get into 100. So if I click brightness again, it's now 3%. If I get into grayscale, it should be 0 again. So that's what we are going to do. So if I click on brightness, then change the brightness value and change the filter value. Likewise, do it for all. If I click on contrast, change the value of the variable contrast and change the inner text value. Refresh it. This is the old one, so we have to work on this. If I change the contrast value and if I change the brightness value, click on contrast, it's 100 again. For blur, it's from 0 to 10. We can change the blur, and we'll do it at the end. If it is grayscale, it's from 0 to 100. If it's saturation, it's 200. If it's opacity, again it's 100. So now once I change the filter value, the image should also apply, we should also get the filter. So we need to create a function called update filter, or we can give apply filter. Now it should be triggered once I change the input field file ranger, input field, input type equal to file. This is filter option and this is range. So let's create a function. So get the image. Where is the image? It's preview image dot style dot filter. We are going to have the shorten property. So brightness, we will be passing the value brightness. Contrast, we will be passing the value contrast. Grayscale, it's grayscale. Saturation, opacity, and blurs. Now let's check. Let's add class disable. We'll do it. Increase the brightness. Preview image is not defined. I believe I have changed the new. So since we are testing, we'll just add the class disable on the So it's disabled now. Change the brightness. Cool. Decrease the contrast. Sorry, increase the contrast. If you want, you can make this black and white. You can add more color or remove color, and you can make this transparent. Cool, that works. Now we need to do the same thing for this button. How we are going to do this? So for the rotate and flip, we need to again set the variable. Cool, rotate, flip and horizontal. For rotate, it's just the transform rotate. For flipping, so it's going to be scale. Now what we have done for the buttons for filters, we are going to do the same for the filter option. It's the rotate rotate options. So where is the filter option? Filter option is here. So for each, get all the options one by one. And again on each, add event listener. As we have already know, we have added ID to this as well. So if you want, we don't need to have active class here. We don't need to set the filter name and the filter range. We just need to get the ID. So if the ID is left, so we need to rotate it by 90 degree. If you see, we need to rotate it by minus 90 degree. If it's right, we need to rotate it by plus 90 degree. So after clicking this, again we need to apply filter just before the click function ends. So here we are going to have transform property. Refresh it and check. So just explain you, rotate, we have passed rotate, either it's plus 90 degree or it's going to be minus 90 degree. Choose the image, rotate it. So again there is name, change in name. Let's try to rotate this. So you can see we are able to rotate it with on left and right. Now let's apply the flip option. It's similar to what we have done right now. So with flip we are going to use the scale property again, but instead of minus 90 and plus 90, we are going to play with plus or minus 1, plus 1 or minus 1. If it is vertical, then make this, if it is 1, then make this minus 1, if it is 1. So to be clear, vertical is 1 right now. If it is 1, then make this minus 1. So if it is minus 1, then make this plus 1. So this is a ternary operator. And apply the value to the vertical. So in short, it is going to be plus 1 or minus 1. On alternate clicks, it is going to be plus 1 or minus 1, and we can pass the value over here in the form of scale. Cool, if you see, we have passed the scale. This is vertical and this is horizontal. Let's refresh this and check. Flip horizontal, so it's going to be plus 1 or minus 1. Flip vertical, this is plus 1 or minus 1. So now once I click on reset, the filter option should get its default value. The default value is this one. Let's do that. So for that we need to get the button called reset in JavaScript, and then we need to add the event listener click to it. It's not change, it's click. Reset button dot click. Once it's clicked, we need to set the value and apply the filter. Let's try this. choose image, let's increase the brightness, let's increase the contrast, let's decrease the saturation, and click on reset. Not working. So reset image, query selector, event listener, click. So the problem which I have made is I have used let, so we don't have to use the value let. So now if I make the contrast blur, slightly blur, saturate, desaturate it, and click on reset. So once I click on reset, the value is going to remain the same. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this as on page load. So once I click on reset, the button brightness should be clicked, and here it should be brightness, and here it should be 100%. Now the filter option means the filter option contains all the buttons. So the first button may have the click in it. So once the click function is applied, the add class will be applied to the brightness, and then input range, it's not input range, it's filter range, should get the value of the brightness. For default value is 100%, and the filter value should again be 100. Refresh it, test again, increase the saturation, that is color, contrast, decrease the contrast, you can increase the contrast, and slightly improve the brightness. If I click on reset, everything gets into default value, brightness, grayscale, and everything. Cool, that works. Now next thing is, the only part left is save image. Once I click on save image, so let's get the save image HTML over here on the JavaScript. I'll store it as a camel case value. So if I make an add event listener, click on it, so simply it is going to create a canvas of the selected image and apply the same filter option which we have applied for the image. How we are going to do it, I'll explain line by line. So creating a canvas and giving the size and height of the image, and applying the filter, so which we have changed the value, and applying the translate, so this is for rotation. So just copy paste it, and this is for scale, so this is simple calculation for rotation, and this is calculation for translate, and we are drawing the canvas like once the filter is applied, we are copying the image into a canvas, and then we are creating a link and adding the canvas to the link and making it download as an image called image.jpg, and we are adding click event to it. So let's try this. Let me select an image, let me give, so this is black and white now. Now once I click on save image, a canvas would be created of the same applied filter and the same applied transform property and scale property, and it will be, and a dynamic link will be created, and this image will be attached as href, and a click property will be called just like we have did this for this choose image. If I click on save, if there is no error, the image need to get saved. There is an error, so you can see it's not reset image, it's save image. Refresh again. We'll try black and white, flip horizontal, flip vertical, and that's it. Click on save. Let's check the output. So you can see the flipped black and white image, we got it. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening.